Well, hey everybody, welcome back to Medical Missions TV. I'm here with Dr. Paul Osteen. And Paul, thank you so much for doing this. I appreciate you joining me to chat a little bit here. Thank you for inviting me to your office.
Yeah, it's my honor. Love to do it.
So, tell us a little bit about M3. I'm kind of excited about what you're doing down here. There's been another mission conference in the north for quite a while now, and this here in Houston, we're just really excited about what you're doing down here.
Well, thanks, Greg. You know, M3 stands for Mobilizing Medical Missions, and we have a conference every year, usually the third week in February. This is our fourth conference this year. And the genesis of M3 was I spend 4 or 5 months a year in remote mission hospitals relieving missionary surgeons so that they can have a break. And I was out there at one mission hospital near Angola in Zambia, and I was finishing up 3.5 months, and one of the physicians there told me, he said, "Paul, do you realize you're the only qualified surgeon in an area the size of Louisiana?" And I thought, goodness. I thought about out
crazy, isn't it?
Yeah, west of us, Greg, for 500 miles, there are floodplains, and there's no access to medical care. So what really hit me was, what if a 15-year-old mom has obstructed labor? What is she going to do?
Yeah.
She has no access to medical care. She can't get to a clinic, and she'll be a death, a maternal death, and nobody will ever have her on their statistics. So, then I flew back to Houston not long after that, and I could see the Texas Medical Center in the background, and we have 2,500 physicians in one zip code in Houston. And so God just birthed in my heart, what if you connected the needs with the people that actually can do that, and let people know. What I say is M3 is all about letting people know the opportunities that I didn't know existed in medical missions when I was going through it.
Yeah.
So number one is to connect people. Number two is to let them be inspired by speakers who are out in the field. I say that only speakers have to have their fingernails dirty doing the work of medical missions, and they're the ones that come and talk to us, and hopefully we'll inspire people to take a tour of the exhibit hall around the bowl of this big building. 75 exhibitors will be out there, and God maybe will move their hearts to say, hey, listen, maybe I could go with your organization or another organization. This isn't about us promoting our organization.
Sure.
This is us promoting what God's doing through you guys.
Yeah, that's awesome. One of the things that I really liked about this is that you seem to have a focus on long-term medical missions. Connecting the short-term volunteer world with that long-term world, and I really appreciated what you're doing with that. And you have the last couple of years you've had some hospitals here. You I think had a whole section of hospitals, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, it's called the Mission Hospital Corridor. What you say is so true, Greg. When you go out and you see, there's a place for short-term missions, as long as short-term missions are in some way working with long-term missions in that area.
Yeah.
And so that's why, there are many, I think you said one time, 600 mission hospitals all around the world that need people's help. And so I just try to, have people at least entertain the thought of, where can I go where there's a sustainable work and help that sustainable work? And whether that's a short-term trip, or whether that's, going for a month, or whether it's a young person who said, I think I could give my life to that. But I'm just really big about sustainable efforts. And I think the other thing, Greg, is that we have to do things collaboratively. It can't be just one denomination doing one thing, and then the academicians doing another thing, and then the social justice people, and then the community health people. We've got to come together. Yeah. This is a complex problem of poverty. We've got to come together, and we've got to make a difference, but it all has to be sustainable.
Huh. That's such a great perspective, and you're kind of singing my song in that I have a real passion for kind of bringing those two worlds together. Tell me a little bit about you and your background, and how did you get started in medical missions?
It's very interesting. When I was 12 years old, my dad took me to South Africa with him, and my dad was a minister here in Houston for many years, and he was doing a speaking engagement over there, and we landed in somewhere. We had to refuel from Madrid down to Johannesburg, and we refueled somewhere where it was really hot on the tarmac. I remember we had exits so the plane could refuel, and I just remember the heat coming off that tarmac as I was a little 12-year-old, and I remember God just put in my heart that one day you'll be back here as a missionary. And I didn't understand it in 12-year-old heart. But anyway, long story short, I went to medical school and trained in general and vascular surgery. And as God would have it, I had an excellent training program in Little Rock, Arkansas. I learned how to take care of burns, 6 months in a burn unit, 6 months as chief resident at a pediatric hospital, Arkansas Children's Hospital. So I was able to get this breadth of experience and training and then practice for years in Little Rock with some great partners. And again, just developing your skills. And in 1999, God spoke to me. It's so unusual, and I don't recommend this to anybody, but this happened to me. I was coming home from my dad's memorial service, and the last place I would ever want to move back to would be Houston. And I felt God spoke to me, really the only time I've ever heard it like this: give up your practice, move to Houston, and help. And so it made no sense to my mind, but I did that, and for a couple of years there, I helped transition from my dad to my brother, Joel, and just explosive growth, and helped just kind of manage the ministries during that period of time. And then God opened the door. Many years ago, I met Franklin Graham, and he took me on a tour of Tenwick Mission Hospital and up to South Sudan. And I was introduced to the world of mission hospitals and the role that surgeons, medical people could have in mission hospitals, and the rest is history. I'm in a position here where I don't have a practice. I can spend 4 or 5 months. I can leave immediately if somebody gets sick. So it's just a blessing. Only God could have constructed it like this.
That's tremendous. That's tremendous. And that's such a need, too, that a lot of people don't understand, is that, there's only about 1,300 full-time missionary providers, healthcare providers, still left serving around the world. And when there's one surgeon, like we have a pediatric surgeon in northern Ghana, for example, Dr. Jean Young, when she's not there's no other surgeon in that region.
Absolutely.
And, just to have physicians and surgeons specifically who are willing to step into that role, that is so huge.
Yeah, and I have real compassion. As physicians here in the U.S., there's compassion fatigue, there's depression, there's all the things that go with practicing medicine. But it's no different overseas. It's no different in these mission hospitals, because the demands are consistent and hard. There's usually not a break, and so I just feel like God's called me to go help these guys and ladies out there that are giving their lives for Jesus and His kingdom, but who need a break. And so it's just a pleasure for me to do that. And they're some of the most lovely, wonderful, kind, sweet, sacrificial people that you'll ever meet. And I tell them all the time that some of these people in well-known areas may have their name up on billboards. They may not have their name on billboards, but their reward's coming.
Amen.
And I'm telling you, they're unbelievable people.
Yeah, I can't agree more. I think we share a heart on that too, is that, because, and I think you get it better than most, is that sending a doctor or a nurse or a healthcare professional to work in a mission hospital setting or a healthcare provision setting looks very different. Their challenges look very different than someone who's pastoring a church or teaching in a Bible college.
Yeah.
They're seeing child death and things on scales they were never prepared for here in this context. So just someone to come alongside them and lift them up is so powerful.
Greg, you bring up a great point, because you're really, daily, you have to deal with death. But remarkably, I tell people I don't have the equipment or the supplies or what we have here in the West, but when you put your 5 loaves and 2 fish in Jesus' hands, it's amazing sometimes what that can do. But the thing that gives you solace over there when you're, especially death of kids, it's just tragic. What gives you solace is Jesus said in Matthew 25, when I was sick, you cared for me. He didn't say you healed me. He didn't say that I recovered and went home and had a great life. There's something that pleases the heart of Jesus to care for people, even if they die. And so that gives me great solace that even if we do our best and they get there too late, or we don't have blood and they bleed to death, or whatever happens, you know what? If we care for them, we're pleasing the heart of Jesus. And really, that's what we both want to do with our lives.
Amen. Well, I look forward at some point to spend a little time on the field with you.
Yeah.
I get to chase some folks around now and then, so I'm hoping that I get to come to wherever you're at some point here in in the near future where I get to follow you around a little bit.
Can I say one thing, Greg?
Sure.
If people have not read your book, they need to do that, because you really talk about combining your efforts with sustainable works in the field. So I'm pushing your book right here, and
Well,
all the things
thank
you've
you.
written, because I'm telling you that the sustainability part of it is something that I think we need to constantly have in our hearts and minds. And the other thing, a little bit off the subject, but the other thing we need to do is we always ought to be teaching. It's not enough for us to go all the time for the next 50 to 100 years. We've got to
Sure.
be teaching to raise the local people who are bright and energetic and have compassion for their own. Give them the knowledge, skill,
Amen.
and ability to continue this when we're long gone.
Yeah, you bring up a good point, that whole idea of raising up the next generation of medical missionaries in their own country. That's really heavy on our heart.
Yeah.
And I'm glad to see that a lot of the newer, younger folks going out really have taken that hard on.
Yeah.
Surgery, to be a bush surgeon, I think you can speak to it better than I can, is a lot different than practicing in this environment. So,
no doubt.
Even training folks in that context is so much different, because you have to be able to do anything from infants to older adults and everything that comes with that, including ortho sometime.
Yeah.
And we send most of the folks that approach us and say, hey, we want to go for a month. Well, our focus is we've got to be focused on taking care of our folks that we have out there long term. So we haven't embarked on sending anybody short term, but we send everybody to World Medical Mission. In fact, another episode, we had a chance to sit down with Lance Plyler and talk a little bit about what they do in supporting the mission hospitals. So I think I'm glad you mentioned that. So anyway, Dr. Paul, thank you so much for taking time out to chat.
Keep doing what you're doing, because you're making a difference.
And you too. God bless.
Thank you.